The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen only.
Get this thing recording. All right, we're good to go.
All right, so welcome everybody. We'll start this off by just kind of, you know, really why we went to do this. We did this really over 2 years ago at the national level, and those track operators that have children racing may have encountered this or seen us doing it under the medical tent, or unfortunately, maybe your own child had to deal with our process. But at the national level, we've been doing this for over 2 years. This is probably really the fourth year doing it, but third year fully. Um, and over the last 2 years is when we've really refined our process and made it something where, at the national level, we're pretty serious about taking you out of the event and you're not able to come back. And that boils back to really the concussions and everything that we do is because we're running that event, and you guys locally are running your guys' events. So we wanted to make sure that you guys had some tools available that helped you stay within the state laws that you're in. And as we go around the country at nationals and we're the runs running those events, we have to abide by each of those state laws. Washington is a great example. When we go there, we've actually got to have riders sign special waivers. So in doing that, that is really an awareness factor. And that's what all of this is for. We have to make the riders, the coaches, the team managers, everybody aware of, the laws that are in place in each state, and really just concussions in general, and to know those signs and symptoms. And, we're complying with state laws ourselves, and you guys should too. In most cases, it's a state law. Sometimes there's county or local laws, and that's all. Take a look at what you have. We'll get into that a little bit later. We have those resources available, and you can look at what you may be subject to. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's put on the promoter or the group that's running that sport to have a process in place that's kind of a due diligence thing. That, a lot of these laws are scholastic or sport laws that deal with high school sports, and they don't really name BMX in any of those, and BMX is not really at all a part of those laws. But just know that you'll still be held to that same standard if things were ever questioned. So we looked at this from an approach of where the future is going to be, and tried to create some tools for you guys. And that's just one of the things that we do to help support your program. And as you know, being a track operator, anything we can do in the track department to support you is something we're willing to do. So we did this. We worked on it through last year. One of the reasons why it took so long was we had to have our membership waivers changed. And some of you may have noticed over the last year, but there's a little bit extra language in there because we're sharing information of the different things about these riders, and we're going to have an alerting system. So with that, we had to kind of put that on the waiver so that riders, parents, everybody signing those knew that their information, or at least their name, would be shared. And that took a year, obviously, to have everybody sign waivers. And now everybody has those waivers signed, so we can move forward with really kind of activating this process. So most of it was built over a year ago, and we had to sit on it while we got these waivers handled. And some people I've talked to, some tracks, were aware that that was coming, and some have even already started to use it here in January. So, but first we'll talk about concussions. And really, as Brad was saying, it doesn't take being knocked out to get a concussion. So everyone's thought that myth. There's a lot of myths about concussions, and people think that, having that being knocked out is the only true concussion, and it's not. So it's anything that's a traumatic brain injury, and most concussions occur without losing consciousness, just as we said. So there's a few different types. One, the head can strike a stationary object. Common examples include a fall. This is what we see most common in BMX. Rider is going to hit the ground. That's the object. Not as often, rider hits another rider, but that could happen. And in football, that's their major one, is human collision, head versus head. We don't see that as often, but you can see that in BMX. And then another one that really is what sneaks up on people is the acceleration and deceleration of the head with no contact to any surface. And this is the one that Brad experienced last year and really, didn't have a hard impact to his head. So he assumed there was no way he could have a concussion. But, we do see that in BMX. They're going to hit the ground and they may land on their back, their arms, their knees, or anywhere else. But if their body decelerates too fast, their head's still moving. And that's the one that, is the hardest to make a decision on or to even detect. So always just be on the lookout. And if you guys have medical teams at place at your local races or someone that's doing first aid, hopefully they've tuned in tonight, but you can definitely share this with them because that's going to be really resourceful for them if they're the ones that are going to flag these people. And then we'll take a look, just a quick glance at what we see at our national events. So events we managed last year, obviously nationals, Gold Cup finals, the Grands, and the Race of Champions. 82 events total. And it really accounts to less than 1% of the riders have any sort of injury. And then of that, we can see that the average injuries per race are 13 and only a 0.72%. So 0.75% are a concussion when it comes to those injuries. So we're still quite low, less than 1 per day of an event, only 59 that we logged for the entire year of last year. And we logged our percentages based on lap counts. A little bit different approach to it, but it's really the exposure to the danger is what we look at. And 20,000 laps were taken between riders. And we can't obviously account for practice. So that's only, first round or second round if you had to go to that. And then your quarters, semis, and mains. So a lot of laps by riders, and that's where the injury ratios really come from. So we'll jump into the actual concussion and some signs and symptoms to look at. When it comes to signs, just always think that's something you see. It's it's something immediate that when you walk up to the person or as first, approach to them, it's something that you're going to see. A symptom, that's usually going to end up being something that occurs later on. It's something that happens over time. It can be, just a few minutes later, and sometimes it can be delayed results over days, depending on what the different symptoms are. And we'll go through signs and symptoms here. The signs are a little bit more of the common stuff that you've seen. Obviously, loss of consciousness. And we'll stop there. And loss of consciousness doesn't mean that you have a concussion either. We've seen people get full evaluations and workups after losing consciousness, and their brain wasn't affected. And that's not an end all either that they have one, but it's definitely a sign that you would want to remove this person from riding at your track, at least for that day. They need to go get checked out. It's definitely a huge flag. But that's the one that everyone knows of as being knocked out. Memory loss. They can't remember something, the day of the week, the time, their surroundings. They're disoriented. They're dizzy. They can't walk. It's that drunk look. If you're an adult and have ever experienced that yourself or witnessed it, you can see that with children sometimes. You can see it with any rider that this occurs to, and they just have that very odd walk to themselves like they're dizzy, although they may not be. Confusion, no sense of who people are, where they're at, what they're doing. A lot of times they won't know what moto they were in, what race they're at, what track they're at. You see every version of being confused. So always be on the lookout for that. And then they have that kind of that blank look, the dazed or vacant stare. They're, you think you're talking to them. They seem to be talking back to you, but they're just, don't have really anything going on their face. They just have that blank look.
That's what my friends caught.
Brad must have had that look that night, and you're talking to the person and they're talking back to you even, but it's like they're just not there. And that's what that dazed or vacant stare is. So, and incoherent speech, that can be everything from slurring your words to not being able to make full sentences, or, they just can't put it all together. And again, all of these things are, good signs that they're probably leading down to the road of a concussion or just need to get checked for one. Now the symptoms, a little bit easier to you're going to see these over time. Headache or dizziness, real self-explanatory on most of these. They're sensitive to light. They're going to go out during the day, or even if they're looking at a light, it could cause them to be dizzy, or they just can't do it. They stare at it and they want to just close their eyes. Being fatigued, instantly feeling tired, even though they were just competing in a race and probably drank a Red Bull right before. They're now sitting there so tired they want to go to sleep. Difficulty concentrating. You can ask them some simple questions, and if it takes them quite a while to remember what color car they drive, or what kind of bike they ride, they just can't figure it out. That's, again, they just can't concentrate enough to remember what their bicycle is. And then obviously not good if they're vomiting, or if you're talking to them, or they're going to tell you they have ringing in the ears, and that doesn't have to be full on ringing. It can be an echoing or any sort of ear problem. If you've ever been kind of slapped in the ear, or hit upon from the side, and you just hear that echoing for a minute. I mean, that's all, symptoms that you're going to see develop over time with these concussions. So we'll take another look at signs and symptoms, just kind of a different approach to looking at these things. Similar stuff to what we already talked about, but they're having a hard time thinking clearly. They're feeling slowed down. They're difficult concentrating, and they're having difficulty remembering new information. And a good way to test that is just to tell them a couple things new that they wouldn't have known, maybe something about yourself or something about your track that they didn't know, and ask them a couple minutes later. And surprisingly enough, when people have concussions, that information's gone very quickly. So looking at the physical signs of things that can happen, again, that's the group of the headaches, fuzzy or blurry vision. They're sensitive to noise or light, and they're feeling tired or having no energy. And the emotional and mood symptoms, they're going to be irritable. So no matter what questions you're asking them, they just don't want to answer them. They want to just leave. They're getting real frustrated that you're sitting with them trying to figure more out. Sometimes you see sadness, and it could be either of these. Sometimes people are mad. Sometimes people are sad. They're just kind of emotionally unstable. You'll see those things develop. And sometimes nervous, or they're very anxious. I know that when my wife had her concussion last year, which wasn't her first, she was very different in the fact that she just seemed like so nervous that nothing was right. And we're just trying to explain to her that you just got a concussion, just take your time, hang out. And, she was determined that life was ending or something. So, you'll see every variation of being nervous and anxious. And then later on, which is not something you'll see, at the track, because this is going to be a symptom that they get to later on, but they could be more tired and sleep more than normal. And remember that, they sleep less than usual. It could be either or, but a lot of times people think you shouldn't let someone go to sleep with a concussion. And that's been proven to not be the case. Sleep doesn't change anything. Most of the specialists now are, telling their patients that they need to sleep a lot to let the brain rest and heal, and staying up extra hours doesn't do that. So they've actually gone away from that. That was always kind of a myth. So there's no real fear in letting somebody sleep if they want to, but that still is just going to be a symptom, or something you'll see later on that kind of proves that, yes, they had some sort of disruption in their brain and possibly a concussion. And again, emotionally upset. They have trouble falling asleep. They're sleeping more than normal. So a lot of different concussion assessment tools, and they range in skill level and are used to identify the effects of traumatic brain injuries. Most research focuses on sport-related sideline evaluation. So you'll see that at our national, and if you deal with any of your local medical people, they'll have a lot of different things that they can utilize to try to assess a concussion. This doesn't mean that your first aid staff needs to implement all of these, or if you are the first aid person one, that there's a set guideline that one's better than the other. It's all just in what you're trained in and what you feel comfortable making that assessment with. But all of them are really tools that start right at the injury point. So immediately after they do these, the most common one is referred to as a SCAT 5. Previously, you could see a SCAT 2, 3, or 4. There's been versions all along. They're all still acceptable. The newest one is a 5. It's about an 8-page packet that it takes about 30 minutes to do if a rider was to have to sit through one. But it gives them a very good baseline and a good answer for the doctor if they go get assessed later on, what was happening at the moment the concussion happened. So that's the most common one that you'll see. Acute concussion testing is a little bit simpler one, and they call that one the ACE. And then there's the SAC, which is a standardized assessment of concussion. And there's different variations of that one as well. And then impact testing is something you'll see on both ends of the rider, from before they had an injury and after the injury. That's a less common one that's used in the field because it's a computerized test that you take beforehand, so you have a baseline. And baseline testing is a whole nother topic. We've explored it with possibly doing this with pros, but baseline testing for 40,000 members is not feasible, and it's really kind of an entry into the sport problem. That would mean that our brand new novice that came out for a one day would have to stop, go get testing before they could come back and compete. So, it will never make it down to the amateur level. It doesn't in any sport, but it's possible in the future on the professional side that, we may explore some impact testing. And so for yourself and your crew, anybody that's working at your track, first aid, or just turn officials, really any of the track staff can go get these. They're no charge. There's a lot of different options out there, but really the main source, like Brad said, all of us here internally did Heads Up Concussion a few years ago. We've all done them over the years. It's pretty simple, but they gear different courses. They have ones for coaches, parents, clinical providers, even athletes. And that's back to the awareness. But theirs is real simple. It helps you understand a concussion, the potential consequences, recognize concussions, learn about steps for returning to activity, which is really the big focus. Once the concussion has happened, we need to stop and make the right approach for this rider coming back into the sport, and a focus on prevention and preparedness to help keep the athletes safe. So all of these are linked on the track operator dashboard. We'll get there later, but there's links to all these so anyone can take these courses. And the National Alliance for Youth Sports also has their own version. It's good to get both. They both only take about an hour to do, online, free, and they just take a little bit different approach to it. Theirs is more for coaches and promoters, which is really where all of us sit, and it's a little bit more detailed on the recognition of it at the track, the sport, the field, wherever that may be. But they, again, go through steps of recovery and education, and that's a good resource as well. And of course, once you finish those, you're going to get some nice things to hang on the snack bar wall. But I'm sure by now everyone's going, okay, well, how does this work for us? And we started mapping this out, and really I did, and said, okay, this has to be simple, not only for the track and for USA BMX, but for the rider. They've got to have a clear answer on how do they, first off, get back to racing, but for a parent, what do we need to do to get our kid racing? So we'll go through this. You can find this exact chart on the track dashboard as well. And, everything starts at the top. We've got a concussion, or you suspect that there may be one. because really the only person that's going to be able to actually diagnose and say yes, a concussion is a medical facility. So as first aid and anyone at any of our nationals, we're making the best educated thought of what may be happening with this person and what the best route to take is. So we're going to suspect it's a concussion. And then at that point, you'll notice this thing's color coded. Green are the areas where USA BMX gets involved. Orange are the areas where the track may be involved. And the rest is blue. That's where the rider's involved, because really it's their health that we're trying to watch out for. And we just wanted to take the best approach to make this happen. So if a concussion is suspected, the track will notify the rider and they're removed from the race. So if that happens, if it's during practice, easy, remove them from the race, give them their money back, give them the paperwork that explains what you guys think, and they can go from there. If it happens during a race, obviously they need to not go up for the next round, and they're done as well. Don't recommend giving them their money back if they're already in the race, because they did race, so you want them to be insured. So once that notification happens to the rider, it's also going to come to us. You guys will have a very simple, mobile-friendly link you can click. You can give name and what track you are, who's reporting it, and quick information. We'll show you that shortly. And it's going to notify two people. It's going to notify me, and it's going to notify a whole bunch of tracks. There's a mileage range of about 500 miles around each track, and that will alert really pretty much anyone in that home area that this rider probably shouldn't go across the road. In terms of right here where we're sitting, Chandler, Arizona is just down the road. Their track could alert one, and Black Mountain will know that same moment, just in case that rider the next night tries to go practice up there. So always be on the lookout for your email for notifications coming in that somebody could be taken out. And of course, if that happens, they just need to bring you the clearance form or give it to us, and we'll let you know they're good to go, which is where the rest of that comes in. So they're going to notify, or we will notify the tracks, and then that's where the rider gets back involved, and they need to go seek out some care. Once they do that, they're going to have a decision that they're either cleared by the doctor or they are denied. If they're cleared by the doctor, then they can go back to the track with that clearance. You can accept it, put them in the race, or they're going to give it to us, and then we'll let all the tracks know as well that this rider's cleared back to the race. So it's just dependent on who they can get that paperwork back to, but you're more than welcome to take it there at the track and put them in the race that evening. If they've been off for 10 or 12, 14 days and they come back with the clearance form, just accept that, send it to us after the race with your TORFs, and we'll take it from there and then let all the other tracks know. And of course, if they're denied, then they'll just be stuck in a circle here. Just kind of, their doctor may have them follow up with a specialty and then circle back to them. And eventually, hopefully, they will get cleared in a matter of time. And then they'll be back into that same process of being able to come to the track or send the reporting form to us that they're clear. So from an awareness side, on the riders, what we did on the homepage of USA BMX in the About section, or I'm sorry, it's in the Riders section, is the concussion page. You can see that right there. And when you go there, there's going to be a whole bunch of different stuff. And this is all about awareness. So we're going to have really 3 sections on that page. We've got a portal to the Heads Up Concussion, gives them a lot of standardized concussion information that comes straight from the CDC. The good thing about this is if they change any of their protocols, it'll automatically be updated. So that's going to always stay updated. We've got a couple fact sheets that are recommended by the CDC as well. They're branded with USA BMX. Feel free to use those as well at your track. And we have all of those available for download on the track dashboard. And the last part of that website for them is obviously if they were reported with a concussion, it gives them clear steps to return to ride. That starts with getting the clearance form taken to their medical doctor, and then bringing it back to the track or submitting it to us. And if they want to submit it to us, there's an email on there, but they can also submit it right on that website. They just put their name, email address in, and upload that, and we will then receive it and notify all the tracks. So I kept referencing the track dashboard and everything that we've housed there. And it's going to be on the track resources page under concussion resources. And one of the major things that we did was put about 6 or 7 different handouts on there. We've got an information sheet, one that's geared towards a rider and one that's geared towards the track staff. And we've got a couple different poster options. There's one of the nice posters there on the right. You can print that and post it in your sign-up building. Another poster, those are all good posters to have, in different areas around the track. And then again, we've got 2 forms. One is the form that you can give a rider if you suspect that they have a concussion. It explains everything that they should be doing or should not be doing and how to get back into racing. And also the clearance form if you want to go ahead and give them that. They can download those on their own from the awareness page under the rider section in concussion. But if you want to print those and have them at the track, it's always good. You can hand both of those to them. They have a clear idea of what just happened to them and how to get back involved. At the National, we have about an 8-page packet that we give to them that has different pages for them and then some pages for the doctor as well. And then hopefully our slide may not work again. So we had this set so we could jump right onto the track dashboard and show you some things. We tested it about 10 times before we started. All right, so let's do this. So once you get to the concussion page on the track dashboard, we've set up the same CDC website that is on the rider section is also on the track dashboard. We've got state laws for all the states. Again, like I said before, most of these are scholastic sports, or it's geared towards those type of laws. It may not specifically be for recreation sports, but following these is a good guideline to what you should be doing in your state. California is an excellent example of BMX is actually spelled out in there. And this is a recreation model, and California is very strict, and they actually named us as one of the sports that has to follow this concussion law. So depending on where you look, you see different variations of it. So check your state. Another thing we found is these laws become outdated as fast as we link them. So if you find that, just let me know. I'll try to find the most current one, or if you find the most current one, feel free to send me the link and I'll update it. We've got some training courses and assessment apps. These are great. We've got a couple options to go down there as far as the certifications, the CDC, the NAYS. This video here from TED Ed is an excellent YouTube video on concussions. Everybody should go watch that. And then if you want a quick way to give someone an idea whether they have a concussion, or you guys want to use this locally as your first aid option, those downloads there, both for iPhone and Android, that's a pretty good app, free as well. And then that same chart that we went through, if you ever want to go back and look at it and try to figure out where someone could be in the process. And then reporting a concussion. We'll go back to the slide for that. So when you click to report a concussion, you're going to end up on a real simple website, and you don't need to be logged into the track dashboard for this website. So this was built this way so one of your first aid, anyone that you hire, an ambulance company or your own track staff, can access this page and report these if someone is suspected of a concussion. And a nice mobile friendly page, pull it up on the phone, just make the report. It's as easy as choosing your state, choosing your track, give us a little bit of information about the rider and a name of who's filling this out in case we just need to contact back and get some more facts. And then what is really happening? Was it a practice? Was it a race? Is it a concussion? Was there loss of consciousness? And then just let us know if you gave them the letter or not. Because if you did not give them the letter, but you did give us their email address, we can reach out to them and get them the paperwork. So that kind of takes you through everything that we built. Most signs and symptoms that you're going to see as the common thing. So if anyone has questions, let's get them going.
So one that somebody mentioned very early on when you were going through some of them, vision changes can also occur. I know when I came in that Monday morning or whatever, I guess it was Tuesday morning because it was after Memorial Day, the vision was the first thing that clued you in. It's like, okay, well, turn your head side to side. Now read me that email. And I just started laughing because my vision just wasn't there.
Yeah, if I remember right, I had you turn your head side to side and you just kind of got blurry in vision. And yeah, that's a good one. Vision wasn't a part of ours. We were going through some simple stuff. As a medical provider, you can get real sophisticated with vision. You always see them, doing the drunk test, the putting the finger out there and watching the pupils and all of that. So if you've got medical staff on site, that's great, having vision being a part of that.
Which leads me into this one, and this is a great question. So what if the parent is a healthcare professional, such as a nurse or physical therapist, and disagrees with the findings, especially if it's a big race and the kid gets removed from the race, resulting in loss of points?
Yeah, so the way we handle that at the National, I'll just start there. There is no debating our medical team, regardless of who they are. And we vary in medical teams from ambulance companies to this past weekend at the Winter Nationals, we had a concussion center there with us providing medical, couple staff members from there. So hard to debate those guys, but it doesn't matter who it is. If you've deemed that person is going to, have the final say, then it doesn't matter who we're talking about. They're going to try to debate their child's safety. That's probably a bad debate for them. I mean, it's just not a road you want to go down, because then you're always going to be wondering who you trust. And in the end, that parent or that doctor, whoever wants to walk up and say that they're going to intervene, isn't a part of your staff, so they won't be sitting there in court with you when this comes back up and you didn't take the person out of the race and they're endangered later.
And that said, I mean, obviously, if I'm a TO and my kid is racing somebody else's kid, I probably don't want to be the one to try to diagnose them and say, hey, your kid's out for the state final tomorrow because I think he's got a concussion. I'd probably want to get somebody else to run through that doesn't have.
Yeah, and to give you an idea at the Nationals, I mean, obviously, when we implemented this, the first thought was, what if our national title contender holder comes down to he got a concussion and we're not going to let him race the Grands? And we had to accept that we've got medical staff there. If they think that's the case, then he's not going to be racing until they go see a medical professional and get that paper signed. Now, if they think they can hurry down to the clinic and the clinic's going to sign them off and bring that paper back and there's a doctor's name on it that wants to take that liability, then we'll put the person back in the race. But
I've seen that. I forget what race we were at.
It's happened at a few races. And unfortunately, there's clinics and hospitals around the country that aren't as geared up to deal with concussions. And sometimes they sign those. But you know what? The liability is now off USA BMX. It's off Chandler BMX or whatever track you are. And it's no longer, you did the right thing. You took the person out of the sport until they could get cleared. Somebody cleared them, and now they're back racing.
Yeah, I've seen that. I forget what race it was at, but it was like the guy. It was like Saturday. The guy gets handed the paperwork, brought it back. We pulled him for Sunday. He brought it back before we got out of there on Saturday and said, "Here's my form. Put me back in." And we were just blown away that he was able to get
Yeah.
that signed that quickly.
And we advise people that, a lot of times people want to run to the hospital and get it checked. And the number one thing I tell people is, if you're going and a doctor's going to assess you in most states, regardless of whether you have one or don't have one, they're not going to sign that in the first 24 hours. It's a very common practice that you don't clear someone for the first 24 hours. So a lot of times people go down, they'll spend the money at the ER, they'll want the assessment, all to find out that the doctor won't sign it.
Anybody else have any more questions? I mean, somebody's saying thank you for compiling all this, especially helpful, especially the state laws. So, yeah, I mean, obviously a big undertaking, and getting the website reporting portion of it was super cool. I know Cody was working with our development team on the website for a long time to get that compiled for that notification, and it's just nice to finally see it there and ready to be used by you guys.
Yeah, and if riders get into a situation and that email is on all the documentation, just have them email medical@usabmx.com. It's an easy address to remember. You can pretty much shout that out at any time to a rider and tell them email there if you think we're wrong, and we'll deal with it on that side. We're here to support you guys in doing this. We want to give you the right tools so you can abide by your state laws. We do it when we're running an event, but all of these events that you guys run locally, Gold Cups, qualifiers, state races, all of your local races and practices, those are events of yours, and you guys should really deploy a similar system. So we wanted to give you the proper tools to do that.
Nice to have backup from USA BMX. Our city has always backed my decisions about getting that letter. Yeah. Yeah, again, so glad this is going to be implemented. We've needed this for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tammy in California, you definitely need it, being in a state that names BMX as one of the sports that is part of the law, and that's a recreation law there. So, really what we're doing and the tools we provide cover you 100%. So just remember that can be the case too. Sometimes the stuff we're doing, you don't need to do as much of in your state, and in other states, you may need to do more than we're providing. But for California, everything that we've got should be what you need.
All right. Any other questions? No? Well, good. Well, yeah, I mean, I know it's just a lot of info. So, a lot of info is out there, but it's now at your disposal if you didn't stumble on it before. We'll certainly, as we always do, we'll take this recording, get this put up on the webinar archives, but then we can get this over to Gmo. Gmo can cut up before the Q&A part of it, and then maybe we can put that up separately as a nice little YouTube video that you can share with any of your people that want to see that might not be on the TO dashboard.
Yeah, and we really just want to push the awareness side of this. I mean, riders need to know that if they know the signs and symptoms, they can help look out for themselves. We're a pretty unique sport in that we don't have coaches sitting on the sidelines able to pull riders off able to pull athletes off the field. We're stuck with riders being individuals and their parents kind of overlooking them. So we really need the awareness to get to the parents and the track operators that know these riders, and track staff that see the injuries happen on the track. In sideline type sports where there's a field and there's coaches on the sideline, they're responsible to take these people out. But we're very unique in that 2 hours later, the person can drive to another track and, hit the reset button and get back on the track. So the alerting system was very important to fix that problem.
Yeah, and that's something that the first time I did the CDC heads up thing, I remember telling Cody that was so centered on team sports and coaches and what the rider was doing when he comes to the sideline. I'm like, it's more applicable to a team manager as a track operator or somebody running a race. A lot of times your only interaction is at the sign up window. With that rider, you're not interacting with him when he's not out there racing. You're busy doing your other job. So yeah, you're relying on other people to kind of see and flag that somebody might not be right.
Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions after the webinar, feel free to email me. I've got resources to 3 different concussion centers that are very well known. One works with the NFL, one works with NASCAR, the other one works with AMA Supercross. So, between those 3, we can probably get an answer on anything needed if possible. If I don't have the answer, I'm sure I've got someone that can get us the right answer on how to deal with something, whether it's the concussion itself or something about alerting or something you need to do with your state law.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank, as I always do, thank you guys for logging on. I mean, logging on and asking questions just makes these webinars better. So thank you for taking the time. We'll get this thing bundled up, pushed up to the website for all those who couldn't make it. And you guys have a great night.